out the survey after the talk, we'd really appreciate that. It helps us continue the program, maintain some funding. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll give Dr. Aschner a quick introduction, and then we'll turn things over to her. Okay, so Dr. Aschner is currently a member of Hackensack Meridian's Center for Discovery and Innovation and a professor of pediatrics at the Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine. She's an internationally recognized leader and physician scientist in pediatrics, neonatology, and perinatal biology, who has devoted her career to the care of critically ill preterm and term newborns and to improving the outcomes of pregnancy. Dr. Aschner's most recent research focus is the impact of environmental factors on children's health and development. Most recently, Dr. Aschner was the recipient of a National Institutes of Health grant earmarked for the study of how environmental factors affect children with a variety of disabilities as part of a major nationwide study. The two-year $5.6 million grant is part of the Environmental Influences on Child Health Outcomes, or ECHO program. This is a massive national cohort started 7 years ago, and the new funding will continue the long-term ECHO research of Dr. Aschner. Dr. Aschner also serves on multiple national and international boards, including the Board of External Experts at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute of the NIH and the National Board of Trustees of the March of Dimes. As a researcher and clinician, she believes in the vital connection between research and practice. She states, and I quote, "There is a synergy between the clinical and research enterprises because it is how medicine moves forward and how discoveries in the lab become the next therapeutic breakthrough in care." End quote. She has put this into practice in her work of roughly 40 years, caring for some of the most vulnerable children and finding better ways to do so. Okay. So with that, I will thank Dr. Aschner very much for coming in person to speak to our students.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, I'm really delighted to be here. I love talking to young people that are really at the start of their career. You're going to hear probably more than you want to know about mine, but I really want this talk to be a general talk on how to pursue an academic professional life. So my objectives are to identify common pitfalls and how you can avoid them during the early stages of an academic career. You might as well learn from other people's mistakes. To discuss how to cultivate mentorship relationships, build collaborations, and really develop resilience in the face of challenges, because there are always challenges. I'll share some strategies for pursuing your professional passion, and along the way, share some of my professional journey. So I don't have any conflicts of interest relevant to this talk to disclose. I am an inventor on a patent at Vanderbilt University, where I spent a big bunch of my career. This has been licensed to a pharmaceutical company for therapeutic treatment of bronchopulmonary dysplasia, which is the medical term for chronic lung disease of prematurity. You heard I am a neonatologist by training. And I have to disclose to you that I cannot help myself. I bring a pediatric lens to all aspects of my academic career. So this talk will be peppered with examples that generally focus on children. Okay, so this is what I think is maybe the most important take-home message from this entire talk. And that is, in order to have a successful and fulfilling professional life, you have to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are, because people tend to be happy when they do something at which they excel. You heard I'm on the board of external experts for at the NHLBI, the Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. And honestly, I love cardiovascular medicine. I really wanted to be a cardiologist, but I have no three-dimensional space relationship qualities. I get lost coming out of the elevator in the subway every day. I just would be a terrible echocardiographer. And I realized that I needed to do something else other than cardiology, because I was never going to excel at echoes. And then the other message is, do something you're passionate about, because this is what leads to a satisfying career and avoids burnout. People are usually happy when they know they made a difference that day in one person's life or across a broader spectrum. So here's the start of my journey. It was the end of my first year of neonatology fellowship. That was 1986, before most of you were born. And I really thought I could manage anything in the NICU. I was a really good neonatologist. And that day, a baby boy was born. He had meconium aspiration syndrome and pulmonary hypertension. PPHN is what we call it. He had flaming red hair, just like his mother. I remember this child like it was yesterday. And he was born on his mother's birthday. And when he got admitted to the NICU, he was breathing a little fast. He needed a little oxygen. He wasn't terribly ill. And I told his mom he was going to be okay. And a few hours later, he crashed, and we were unable to resuscitate him, and he died. I don't think I ever recovered from that particular child's admission. I spent a long time with that family afterwards. And I walked away from that saying that somehow in my career, I had to find a way to prevent and treat this devastating condition. And I really devoted like the next 25 years of my career to doing just that. So I want you all in this room to think about, what are you passionate about? It might be research and discovery of new knowledge. It might be teaching the next generation or solving complex real-world problems. Maybe it's contributing to society by advancing your field of study or developing new methodologies or applying analytical tools to advance human health and well-being, or changing policies that impact healthcare delivery, the environment, or education on a local or global scale. It really doesn't matter, because you can do anything as long as you do it well, and that takes work. So professional passion often arises from important clinical or laboratory experiences, personal real-life experiences, and from role models. And it should guide your activities. Think about how you can make a difference while doing something that makes you want to come to work every day, and you will have a great career and personal life. Vet your passion. Engage your mentors, your teachers, your colleagues, your family, and share with them verbally, out loud. Does this capture what you see in me? Am I on the right track? What course corrections or additional training or skills do I need? And then align your passions with opportunities. And those opportunities come in many forms. They can come from your teachers or mentors, from your collaborators, from your colleagues, or they might be funding opportunities that cross your desk, and may map a path to make a difference in your area of passion. But in the end, you need to understand what for you personally success looks like. And for me, it was reduced neonatal pulmonary hypertension-associated morbidity and mortality. And you have to begin this journey with the end in mind. So some advice early in your career: develop an area of expertise and build your projects around a theme. Original research, manuscripts you might write, even as co-authors, book chapters you have an opportunity to contribute to or write, talks you give, grants you write. Ideally, your clinical or professional expertise should relate to your research expertise and your scholarship. And your clinical practice, or whatever you are involved in, can be a source of research samples, cohorts, quality improvement, and advocacy projects. Building a theme builds your reputation and your credibility in the field, and it opens opportunities for collaboration and networking, which you might not have if you're doing one of this, one of that, and there isn't really something that pulls it all together. And I like this quote from Abraham Lincoln: the best way to predict your future is to create it. So there are some early career mistakes that it's good to avoid. First of all, you have to totally embrace the idea that there is no success without a willingness to fail, because not all projects will work out. I've had plenty that went down the drain. And everyone has papers and grants that are rejected. You have to have a thick skin in this business. I like this cartoon on rejection. Thank you for submitting your story to our magazine. To save you time, we are enclosing 2 rejection slips, one for this study and one for the next one you send us. It's a joke, but sometimes it feels that way. But you should never, ever give up. There are some other common early career mistakes. One is lack of focus and trying to do it all. We talked about building a theme for all the work that you do. But a bigger mistake is lack of follow through, starting many projects and not really bringing them to fruition. Be patient, and be patient with yourself, because everything takes longer than you think it will, especially the first time you do it. So don't wait for the last minute if there's a deadline. The next paper, the next grant will take less time and will be easier to write than the first one. And you will get faster at everything with time, but give yourself enough lead time when you're doing something for the first time. Okay, be a finisher. Impose deadlines on yourself, like put it on your calendar. And remember that the enemy of good is better. You can always tweak that paper you're writing, that grant you're writing forever. Like you can always make every sentence just a little bit better, but you got to get it out the door. And remember, not just in medicine and research, but almost in every field now, if you didn't somehow publish it, it's like you didn't do it. Here are some career mistakes that you can learn from your own mistakes, but a few of these are much better off learning from others. And this one's a big one in today's day and age. This slide used to say email. Now I've just mostly talking about social media posts. But remember that these are more like a postcard than a letter. So if you don't want to see it published in the New York Times or whatever your favorite online source is, or post it on a government website, don't send it. It will come back to haunt you. Be very, very careful with what you post. And if you're upset about something, wait a day. Reread it tomorrow before sending it or posting it. A lot of people have learned that lesson the hard way, and you can read the news every day now and see people who lose their jobs for posting things that maybe were not appropriate or they shouldn't have said. Other lessons you can learn from others or learn the hard way, get it in writing. Follow up important meetings, especially if they have anything to do with money, with written communication to clarify that all the parties left with the same understanding of what was discussed and agreed upon. And there are some lessons that I personally still need to learn. I lecture about this all the time, but I'm really bad at it. Sometimes you just have to say no, or at least not right now. It's really all about prioritizing your time and spending your time on things that are going to move your goals forward and fit well with your passion. So I honestly had this cartoon pasted above my computer in my office for 2 decades. It says, I don't know, I hope you can read it. Yeah, it shows up pretty well. But honestly, I have so much to do that right now, I don't think I will ever be able to die because I need to get those things done, right? Okay. Another one. When opportunity knocks, answer the door. But opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and it looks like work, right? It isn't something just gets handed to you on a silver platter. Take those opportunities when they present themselves and they align with your passion and your goals. But remember, it's probably going to involve a lot of time and a lot of effort on your part. I want to spend a minute talking about the imposter syndrome. I used to think this was something that only impacted women. It's not true. I think men suffer from the imposter syndrome as well. And if you've never experienced it, you may not be pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, right? You have to get out there and try something that even if you're not quite sure you're up to, because that's the only way you can move things forward. So how do you overcome imposter syndrome? Ask for help. Build your network and use it. Accept help and accept the fact that you're going to feel like an imposter and get used to it. Fake it until you make it. So, in the beginning, and when you're a student, it may be true that what you know is a lot smarter than what you think other people, particularly if they're more senior than you, know. But the reality is very quickly, particularly as you develop your skills in your chosen area of professional work, that what you know and what other people know are really much more balanced than what you think of in your head. And this was another poster I had hanging in my office for a long, long time. You think you have things under control, you're just not going fast enough. Okay, let's talk a little bit about mentorship. So a mentor is someone who's willing to invest time and personal know-how to assist the growth of another person. It can be someone older than you. It actually can be someone younger than you. But mentors must have a desired expertise. And mentorship and mentee-mentor relationship is really a learning partnership between someone with experience and someone who wants to learn. And you don't have to have all the answers to be a mentor. You just have to be willing to share what you know. So every one of you in this room can be both a mentee and a mentor to someone else. And there are many kinds of mentors. There are career mentors, there are clinical mentors, there are scientific mentors, and there are life mentors. And one person rarely can fill all these shoes. Most people will benefit from having multiple mentors. It may be a long-term relationship, but it can be effective in a focused and time-limited fashion if you're just trying to learn a particular skill or technique. And no matter how senior you are, everyone who wants to grow and improve can benefit from a mentor. Mentorship's a mutual relationship. Be explicit about what you hope to gain from your relationship with your mentor. It shouldn't be a one-way street. The mentor can and should learn from the mentee. And mentorship requires trust. Often the mentee has to take the initiative and nurture the relationship. The chances are, if you have a more senior mentor, they're mentoring many people, and they are going to depend upon you, the mentee, to keep things on track and continue to communicate and organize meetings and so forth. So mentors can serve as a sounding board. They can help the mentee find their own solutions. They can suggest resources for help. They can empower your self-confidence and help you overcome imposter syndrome and encourage you to reach beyond your comfort zone. But there is a difference between mentorship and sponsorship. And in some ways, sponsorship is even more important as you advance in your career, because mentors talk with you, sponsors talk about you. Mentors help you skill up, sponsors help you move up. Mentors give you perspective, but sponsors give you opportunities. So most of you are in some STEM field here, correct? Why would anyone choose a career as a scientist or even a physician in these challenging times? And, these are old data. I suspect if we were to redo this survey today, the results would even be more scary, because only about 50% of scientists back in 2014 thought it was a good time for science. You can imagine what people are thinking today. And despite what is going on, and believe me, I just got a $27 million NIH grant for the next 5 years. But I had to change the title of my grant. I had to change my public-facing abstract because I used the word disability, which is now a no-no word in the federal government, right? Despite the age-old challenges, and there have always been challenges. I've lived through great years and lean years at the NIH. and the current political climate, I still remain very optimistic and enthusiastic about the future of an academic career as a scientist, an engineer, or a clinician. So I want to talk a little bit about what I see as some potential opportunities, and this is where my pediatric lens comes in because I always use pediatric examples. But some of the opportunities that are out there now for people interested in science, engineering, and medicine are life course research, because we really do understand that the antecedents for lifelong health start very early, maybe not only in utero, but in the previous generation. Rare diseases. Nobody wanted to study rare diseases. Why? Because they were rare. But now look at the explosion of research and the opportunities to do something for a rare disease that nobody had the bandwidth, the tools, or the financial resources to study and innovate around. Primary prevention. Medicine has spent the last umpteen decades on secondary prevention. You wait until the disease is diagnosed and then you try to treat something that's already in process. We need to do more research on the risk factors, the resilience factors before the disease is even manifested, so we can prevent disease before it starts. And then precision health, tying together innovations and interventions that are specific for that individual, their disease, their surroundings and their environment and their genomics and epigenomics and microbiome. And the tools are now available to us to do that kind of precision health. And then there's all the social and environmental determinants of health. They say health outcomes is like 30% your genetics and everything else is modifiable, right? And we can use advances that are happening so fast that I'm having trouble keeping up in technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so forth. So this is really about the research that I do, because the unique benefits of research in early life is because a good start to life can last a lifetime. And most of you have probably heard of the developmental origins of health and disease, or DOHAD. It's because the early origins of health and sickness probably begin before birth. And this is a very important opportunity to study pregnancy and interconception health, to make a change in the outcome, not only for that fetus and that child, but maybe for the next generation. And there are many unique benefits of research in early life, because you can prevent the lifespan of disease burden and financial cost. So Professor Healy mentioned my ECHO grant. This is a longitudinal study. It is funded by the NIH. It will be funded for a total now of 14 years until 2030. And it was really launched to better understand the effects of physical, chemical, and biological exposures, social and behavioral factors, and the natural and built environment on child health and development. And ECHO is really unique because they really want to answer crucial questions about the effects of a broad range of early environmental influences and inform high-impact programs, policies, and practices that can improve child health. Currently in ECHO, we have about 140,000 participants and hundreds of thousands of biospecimens. It is an enormous resource that will be there for people to study, not only during this funding cycle, but scientists for the next generation. Most pediatric diseases are, in fact, rare diseases. There are some common ones. Asthma is pretty common now. Obesity is very common. But a rare disease is defined as a disorder that affects fewer than 200,000 Americans at any given time. There are nearly 7,000 rare diseases that affect 25 million Americans. 80% of rare diseases have identified genetic origins, and that number keeps increasing. Every year, we discover more. But others are caused by infections, by allergies, by environmental exposures. And man, we all have environmental exposures that are not good for our health. Many are chronic, progressive, degenerative, and life-threatening, and half of all rare diseases impacts children. And there's an explosion of interest, resources, funding, and advocacy for rare, orphan, and undiagnosed diseases. These are just a few of them. And this article really struck me because this is a disease that I have been studying and was basically uncurable. And this article came out in May, just before I gave this talk to another audience. And it was really breakthrough gene therapy for an infant with a rare metabolic disease called CPS1 deficiency. The world has changed, right? When I could make this diagnosis when, 30 years ago, but there was nothing we could offer those children really. Now there's curative therapy. So it's a very exciting time in the area of rare diseases. But there are always challenges. One of the challenges that is pretty universal is attracting and nurturing young investigators. We need young people to be invested and passionate about creating new knowledge and being involved in breakthrough therapies. We have a lot of health and workforce disparities, disparities in exposures, disparity in outcomes, and disparities in who is part of the healthcare and scientific workforce. We need innovations in medical education and lifelong learning. Access to quality healthcare and subspecialty expertise is a big challenge in many parts of the country, maybe not so much in New York, New Jersey, but I lived in Tennessee for a long time. I lived in North Carolina for a long time, and there are many parts of the country where women have to drive hours to see an obstetrician, or children have to fly in an airplane to get subspecialty help. Care coordination and transitions of care from childhood to adolescence to adult medicine to geriatrics, these are challenges for us. We don't do it well. And being a learning health system and a high reliability organization is also a challenge that all of our institutions face. We have a leaky pipeline, and this really speaks directly to all of you in this room. The data are old. It's actually gotten worse. The graph that you see on your left really shows the success rate of the investigator-initiated R01 mechanism for funding at the NIH going down in red while the number of applicants goes up in blue. And the average age of someone getting their first R01 has unfortunately gone up and up and up. And it's really much more common to get funded if you're my age than if you're a younger person in their late 30s or early 40s. But we can't be complacent. We really need to focus on the pipeline. We have to excite, attract, and recruit promising students like all of you to biomedical research. We need to recognize the critical role of mentoring at every stage of your career and develop formal mentorship programs. We really have to acknowledge generational differences in the increasing number of women in academic medicine and STEM fields. This was not the case when I went to medical school. I was like the third or fourth class of women that were in that medical school, including true of my undergraduate career as well. And because of the changing demographics, and because men really want to get much more involved with their families, institutions need to be more flexible, right? Or we're going to lose young people to science. And we have to stop incentivizing research. Salaries and position security is key to expanding the STEM workforce. We have to align research priorities and funding with the biggest health problems that face society and individuals. We already talked about the rising incidence, burden, and cost of common chronic diseases, such as obesity, the multitude of rare diseases that have suboptimal outcomes. It takes decades sometimes to translate scientific evidence into practice and actually improve health. And there's a whole field of implementation science that's very important and studies how to actually do that translation of new discoveries and how to get it into practice. Antenatal steroids is the prime example. It has saved literally hundreds of thousands of newborn lives. It took 30 years from the initial discovery in an animal model before it really got implemented widely in practice. Can't wait 30 years anymore. We have a lot of social and environmental determinants of health that are a really big and important driver of important health outcomes. And we have large disparities, both in exposures and in health outcomes. And we have to develop strategies for engaging transdisciplinary researchers. Knowledge is so broad right now, you can't possibly know everything about every field. And so team science and working together with people who have expertise in other fields they need is often really rewarding and the best way to move things forward. And then I think the last point is one that we don't talk enough about, but we have to develop the tools to assess the economic and societal value, the return on investment of research. Man, we really need that talk right now, right? And people need to learn how to think about the ROI of the work that they are doing and work it into your grants, into your media posts, into your return of results to your research subjects or to the scientific community as a whole, because otherwise we're not going to be funded to do the research in the future. All right, so I'm going to try to do this. This is a very personal but annotated walk through my very long career. I'm only doing this not because I think you're so interested in my career, but to tell you that this is a marathon, not a sprint, okay? So I got married a gazillion years ago. I was in the middle of medical school. And my first child was born literally the day after I graduated from medical school. I was out to here, good size. Those gowns are one size fits all. The dean put the hood on me and said, "This is for both of you." I walked off the stage and I went into labor 3 hours later. And so here I am being hooded. You can tell I'm just a little bit pregnant. And my second child was born during my neonatology fellowship. You can see how long the trajectory is, 4 years of medical school. I actually didn't do my pediatric residency in 3 years. I did it in 4 years because I had that baby and I needed to break up my time a little bit to be able to take care of her and get back to work. And my third child was born at the end of my neonatology fellowship. And my third child was born prematurely, was not expected to survive. It was one of the most horrendous experiences of my life. It was touch and go for probably 10 days. It changed entirely how I practice medicine, how I talk to families. Wouldn't wish this experience on anyone, but I'm a different physician because my own child was critically ill in the NICU. My fourth child, because I was crazy enough to keep going, I love kids, right? Was born early in my academic career. Yes. And I did not get my first independent research grant funded until basically 6 years after I finished fellowship. I was what I call a late bloomer. I had 4 kids. There were only so many hours in the day. My colleagues who had trained with me were writing grants right and left. Some were being successful. Not me. I didn't have the bandwidth for it. So I like to tell people that you can do everything. You may not just be able to do it all at the same time. And for me, starting late was a bit scary, but it ended up being the right thing for my priorities. And at the time that I was able to start thinking about writing my own grants, instead of just fixing the English on my husband's grants, it was the right time for me to do that. And then I got, an American Lung Association grant, a March of Dimes grant. My first NIH grant didn't get funded until like 15 years after training. I had to write to the NIH and ask them I was too old to write on my first grant. They were like, no, we don't age discriminate. And right about there was when that first child of mine, who I delivered right after medical school, started medical school herself. I was still paying off my medical school loans, by the way, when she started. All right, I got another NIH grant and another NIH grant and more and more. And I began somewhere between my move from Vanderbilt, where I was division chief of neonatology, to Einstein. I moved to the Bronx initially to become chair of pediatrics, was when I began to translate the last 20 some odd years of work that I did at the bench to the bedside. And I'm still working on that. And then I became a grandmother twice. And then my first ECHO grant was funded. And then I had grandchild 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then my second ECHO grant was funded. And now I have 8 grandchildren. Okay. It's a long journey, but it's so rewarding, right? And actually, my oldest grandchild is a study subject in Denver, where she lives, in ECHO, in one of those ECHO awards, right? So while I was out visiting her, she went and had her ECHO appointment, complaining about the blood draw, right? Okay, so that just gives you an idea. But I would do it all over again. I've seen the world with academic medicine. I've gotten to travel, to lecture. You begin to appreciate sort of what you have at home, but also what's out there in other countries that's really good. Sometimes we think all the good things are here, maybe not so much lately, but anyway, you learn a lot from being able to travel, and you get invited to travel and speak when you publish the work that you do. Okay, so I'm going to do this. It does kind of focus a little bit on women, but actually on, I imagine most of you are not yet parents. But I want to talk to you about taking on a leadership role. It may not be the chair of a department right away. It might be the leadership of a little student organization, right? Or a special interest group. But taking on leadership or administrative roles gives new meaning to the term lifelong learning, because all you really need to know, you didn't learn in medical school or undergraduate school or in your prior academic positions, because when you are in a leadership role, you'll spend 80% of your time doing things for which you most likely have no formal training. So when I became first a division chief and then a chair, I found that there were some things, I had the imposter syndrome big time, but I found there were some things that were very familiar about my leadership role. And I realized that I actually had decades of on-the-job experience with the most important aspects of my leadership position. And this thing, certified SPART mom and a degree in motherhood, but you can substitute parenthood or fatherhood. And this was my former job experience, my 4 children and my grandchildren, right? So this is the job description of an academic leader. Long-term team player needed for challenging work in an often chaotic environment. Candidates must possess excellent communication and organizational skills and be willing to work variable hours, which will include evenings, weekends, and frequent 24-hour shifts on call. Certainly true for a neonatologist. Some travel required. Must provide on-the-site training and basic life skills. Must have strong skills in negotiating, conflict resolution, and crisis management. Important skills to have at every stage of your career. Ability to treat flesh wounds a plus. Must be able to think outside of the box. Must reconcile petty cash disbursements and be proficient in managing budgets and resources fairly. Unless you want to hear he got more than me for the rest of your life. And man, does that apply to a department? Trust me, I was a chair for 10 years. Must be able to withstand criticism. Must be willing to bite tongue repeatedly. Must be willing to face stimulating technical challenges. You saw me struggling with my technical challenges before we started this talk. must set priorities, maintain calendars and coordinate multiple projects, must have ability to plan and organize social gatherings, ordering pizza, must have a highly energetic entrepreneurial spirit because fundraising will be your middle name, must always hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst, must assume final, complete accountability for the quality of the end product, must constantly retrain and update your skills so that those in your charge can ultimately surpass you. And on-the-job training offered on a continually exhausting basis. Don't be afraid of leadership roles. You can do it. So I often think of those who have looked to me as a leader, just as I would my own children. They need nurturing. It requires patience. It requires explicit expectations, sometimes requires corrective action. Everyone needs time to grow and mature. People make mistakes, must be constantly challenged to reach their full potential. They need a role model, need an advocate, and a strong desire for their individual and collective happiness and success. So I like this quote, life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving. And I'll bring this to a close so we have some time for discussion. But I really want to acknowledge all my mentors, all my mentees who teach me so much. I now have 1 million medical student mentees, and my family who have taught me so much. And I can't tell you how happy I am to be at the Center for Discovery and Innovation at Hackensack, which right now has given me an opportunity to live my very best life. And that's it. Thank you.
So we'll open it up to any student-specific questions that you might have for Dr. Aschner.
Yeah.
Your personal family life and your professional. How did you feel about it?
You know, I told you I started really late. I really focused on my clinical skills and being the best neonatologist I could possibly be when my children were young. And it was hard. And I had a partner who was really willing to step in. I was on call a lot, overnight call. He had to get the kids to bed, you know, give them dinner. They were always happy when I was home cooking, but nonetheless, they got fed. Nobody starved. They got off to school, sometimes with mismatched socks, but it didn't matter. They got there. I was very grateful. And then when I got home after 36 hours in the hospital, because that's what I often did, it was my turn to cook and clean and get the kids to bed and, you know, so on and so forth. There were a lot of things I gave up, right? You just have to prioritize. There'll be a time for everything. Now I have much more time to focus on me. My kids are grown. They're all parents themselves. But back then, yeah, I didn't get the exercise I should have gotten. I didn't get the sleep that I should have gotten. But my kids were my source of joy. I kept them up late, you know. My children put their kids to bed at 7:30, 8 o'clock. My kids stayed up till 11 p.m. I wanted them to sleep in daycare, right? So I had time with them when I got home from work, and daycare loved them because they napped so long. I could sometimes wake them up in the morning, get them dressed, put them in the car, and get them to school, and they didn't even wake up, right? They were so tired, but they, you know, they all turned out great, right? And so you just have to find your path and the right time to do things. It is a bit of a balancing act, and there will be sacrifices you'll make, but your time will come. So now I rock climb 3 times a week. I literally spend 9 hours a week climbing, either in a gym or outdoors. I couldn't have found the time to do that when I was, you know, had young kids at home. It wasn't going to happen, right? Now I've got time. And I'm doing the things that I love. So there's a time for everything in life. And like I said, don't give up your dreams. Just know that sometimes things have to happen at a time when you can make them happen and still juggle all the things that are your priorities. I hope that, you know, and for everybody, the answer is going to be a little different.
What, how do you
career school if there's rarely any opportunity for that career thing?
You know, the opportunities are there. You just have to be persistent and look for them. And sometimes, you know, there are opportunities that a colleague, a mentor, a teacher points out to you. If you hear something in a podcast or you read an article and it strikes you as really resonating with what you want to do, then dig deep. And you'd be surprised. You know, when I was early in my career, I was always afraid to like reach out to the, you know, the big famous physician scientists that I so admired. You know, oh, they, you know, they're busy. Why would they want to talk to me? And my mentor said, no, pick up the phone and call them. You're stuck. You're in the lab. I can't help you with this. This guy published these papers. Call the lab. Find out why your experiment isn't working. Took me weeks to get up the courage to like look up the number, call the lab. The guy was so happy that I wanted to like do this work and sent me all his protocols. And sure enough, we had some, you know, some silly formula that didn't have the right type of salt or something. I can't even remember the details. All I remember was that why was I so afraid to call when he actually told me he was flattered that I reached out. So don't be afraid. Reach out to people who you think can help you. Every once in a while, you'll meet a jerk. Don't let that dissuade you. There are plenty of jerks around, right? But most people who are successful really want to be helpful to the next generation. And so you just really need to do your homework and then don't be afraid to ask for advice on how to get from where you are to where you want to go. Right? Yeah.
Those who know their future career and aspire to be at a very young age. Those were great. If you explored other career opportunities and how you ultimately decided you wanted to go to medical school and
Yeah.
how you decided on neonatology.
Okay, great question. A little bit of a story. So neither one of my parents had a college education. My father was deaf. Um, I had to borrow money to go to undergraduate school. Was not pre-med. That just seemed way out of reach. It was a long time ago. But I really liked biology. I took a class in medical genetics. When I signed up for the class, the professor who was the chair of the Department of Biology said, this is not a class for freshmen. You'll fail this class. Wait a couple of years, take it when you're a junior. And I said, nope. So I took the class, aced it, and he's the one. It is that professor who changed my entire life. He reached out to me and said, he was also the you know, the head of the pre-med interest group, right? Where were you last night? I didn't see you at this. By now I'm a sophomore, right? I didn't see you at the pre-med group. I was like, that's because I'm not pre-med. And he said, why the hell not? And I didn't know why the hell not. I just hadn't thought it through. I didn't think I could afford it. I just hadn't occurred to me that I could be a doctor. He got me into this shadowing experience at the local hospital. He totally pulled strings because it was a very popular elective. Everybody applied and only a handful of people got in. I got in. And he guided me for the next several years. I hadn't taken chemistry, I hadn't taken physics, I hadn't done my MCATs when everybody else did. I had to do them a year late. And then he wrote all kinds of letters for me to get scholarship funds to go to college or to go to medical school. Okay, so there's an example of someone who took me under, I didn't ask for it and really helped me see that this was a path that I could pursue. And then I decided I wasn't going to be a pediatrician because that was really the only field that women went into in medicine then. And I wasn't going to do what anybody thought I was going to do. And so I tried surgery and all sorts of things. And in the end, I realized I was cutting my nose to spite my face because I just loved pediatrics. And so now I wanted to be a pediatrician, but I was pregnant in my last year of medical school and I didn't know how I was going to do that. So I had to go knocking on the chair's door to say, I really liked my, at that time, my husband was a graduate student there. We really couldn't move. I was like, I'd really like to do peds residency here, but my baby's due like the day residency starts. And he used to like show up on rounds just to like sort of observe to see how I was. And then I got a call to go to the chair's office, and he offered me a shared residency to do my internship over 2 years. And so I had my baby. I took the first 6 months off. I stayed home with her. And then I did the next 6 months straight. And then in the next year, I did 3 months off, 3 months on, 3 months off. And I thought, my path was a little meandering, right? But I ended up where I wanted to be. And neonatology, I was terrified of the NICU. I walked in there and I fell in love with the field, right? It was everything I was looking for, technical, a lot of procedures, really high risk. Conversations with families. There was just nothing about neonatology that I didn't love. But then as I was, moving on through my fellowship years, I went kicking and screaming to the lab. I didn't want to do research. I was forced to do research. And lo and behold, I loved it. And so sometimes, when opportunities present themselves, try it on for size. It might fit, it might not fit, but don't go always with your preconceived notions, right? So yeah, that's a little bit of my journey. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for coming, for discussing your career and your journey with us. But with these evolving times that we're living in now, how do we as rising professions in different fields that we're going into overcome the struggles of governmental forces trying to hinder us in our scientific advancements in our fields?
Yeah, it's particularly challenging right now. But there has been many challenging times before. This too will pass.
A little bit louder, please.
I said, this too shall pass. We have faced challenging times before. There's things being done now that will be reversed. Unfortunately, there are probably some things that are irreversible, but ultimately we can't give up, right? And, there are a lot of people who want to see things get better, and hopefully over time they will. You're fortunate because I think by the time all of you are ready to really launch your careers, we will hopefully be over the worst of it and the pendulum will be swinging back. But you can't give up, right? You just have to stick with what you're passionate about and pursue it to the very best that you can. I was terrified that ECHO would just not be funded. It's a grant for like $200 million a year every year. Congress has to reappropriate it every year. I told you I had to change the title of my grant. You do what you have to do, but I haven't taken my eye off the ball. And honestly, I'm doing the best work I've ever done and having the most fun I've ever had in my professional life in some ways. Yeah.
Unrelated question. First of all, do you receive any discrimination at your job because it was mother? And second of all, when do you think is the best time during undergrad school to work with a professor in a lab?
Yeah. So there's always, there's no bad time to work with someone who's doing work that you're interested in. You just have to be honest with them about how much time you have to commit. And they have to be honest with you whether they've got a project that you can actually get something out of in the time that you have to commit. So, this week I met with 3 more medical students who want to work on ECHO with me. And I had to sit them down and say, first of all, what year of medical school are you in? Because I gave a lecture on ECHO and then I got a lot of requests. If you're in your 3rd or 4th year, you need to pick a different project because ECHO from start of project to publishing a paper typically takes 12 to 18 months, right? So they needed to be early on. So you have to be honest with what's the ramp on time for actually bringing a project to fruition. And you need to dig your teeth into something that you really want to do. Just being handed a data set and, publishing paper isn't going to teach you all that much. So that's the first question. Have I ever been discriminated against? Are you kidding me? Oh yeah, I'm really old, right? There were not a lot of women in medicine. I could tell you horrendous stories about how I was treated when I got pregnant as a fellow in neonatology, and was basically told, you're going to have a family, or are you going to be a professional? It was an awful time. I once gave a talk in a national meeting. It was standing room only. It was in a ballroom. There must have been 1,400 people there. I didn't think my legs would support me. I was pretty young. I was in my late 30s at the time. I didn't think I'd be able to walk up to the podium. But I gave my presentation. I managed to get through the questions and answers and was very pleased with how it went. And that night I went to a reception, and a very famous, like world famous neonatologist who I'd always admired came up to me. I was standing with some of my male colleagues and said, "Judy, I was at your talk today, and I just want to tell you that you looked beautiful up there." And I don't know what possessed me, but I turned around and I said, "You're commenting on how I looked? Not that was a great talk, not that was wonderful work, not I'm really interested in your science. If Joachim had been up there giving that talk, would you have told him he looked handsome up there?" That poor guy, he like backed out of the room and never said another word to me for the rest of my career. He's fortunately long retired. I don't know if he's still alive yet, and that's a minor example. Yes, no, many, many ways of discriminating. The child that I had during my first year of fellowship, my division chief was so angry with me that I was pregnant that I was afraid to take maternity leave. I came back to work 2 weeks after I had that child. I would never let any woman who worked for me do that to themselves. But that's what it was like back, that was 1986, right? So things have changed in most ways. For women, it's gotten somewhat better. I don't know, now we're in a interesting time. The arc moves in the right direction. We're in a little blip right now, but you can't let stupid attitudes get in your way of doing what you need to do, right? If anything, it made me even more determined to succeed as a woman physician scientist because people didn't think I could do it, right? Yeah.
Promoter just asked, do you think there's any way we get a copy of the slide?
I can send them. I think she's recorded the whole thing. So yeah.
It's being recorded, it will be posted.
Yeah.
Is it generally at Hackensack Meridian States?
At the CDI or at the hospitals?
At the you're also a teacher at the.
Yes, I do. I do teach. A lot of my lecturing, other than things like this, are focused on neonatology fellows, pediatric residents. I stopped practicing medicine. I'm 70, so it was time, right? And my field is 24-hour call. So, and as I was, intubating and having to grab I used to be able to intubate a stone, right? Now I have to grab the nurse's reading glasses to get the tube in. I figured, now was the good time, right? I am currently at the Center for Discovery and Innovation, which is on the same campus as the medical school, and it's a wonderful environment. I can't think of any point in my career where I've been in a more supportive environment than I'm in right now. All of HMH is a really good institution. I think they have their heart in the right place. Being a chair is tough. Being a woman chair is really tough. And I was usually just one of two in the room, right? So, yeah. But wherever you go, there's the good, there's the bad. You seek out the good and you manage that. Yeah.
How did you and how do you deal with failure and imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So I still have imposter syndrome. I have to totally admit it. The work that I do is dependent upon really sophisticated biostatistical skills that I don't have. And I don't think I can learn at this point, right? So it is team science, right? I work with people who have the skills that I don't have. What I bring to the table more than anything else these days is knowing what are the important questions to ask, right? And then knowing how ECHO works. I've been funded for ECHO since 2016, so I really understand how this large sort of meandering national study, which, sometimes feels like you're flying the plane while you're building it, works, and how to get things done. So yeah, I don't know if that at all answers your question, but